When my son and his wife asked me to watch their 4 kids while they went on vacation, I gladly agreed, thinking it would be a nice bonding time with my grandchildren. But upon their return, instead of gratitude, they demanded money for the expenses they incurred during their trip. I was stunned and speechless. What I did next left them in utter disbelief. My daughter-in-law Eileen looked at me like she had just asked the most normal question in the world and stood there calmly waiting for my reaction. But I had absolutely no idea what to say. They had just come home from a week-long vacation abroad, and I had watched their 4 little angels during this period. At worst, I expected them to come home and be too tired from the trip to really interact with me. But they had come home looking like they had an easy journey home, and it made me happy to see that. I knew like no other what a long flight and car journey can do to you. However, that good model did not result in any good communication. Before they even asked how their children were doing or how these past couple of days had been, Eileen immediately confronted me with their request. She told me how much they ended up spending on their week of vacation and asked me if I could transfer the money this week as they would need it to pay the rent. I was completely stunned and did not even know what to say. When Eileen said how confused I was, she did not bat an eye. She just asked if I wanted to see the receipts, as they had kept all of them. Stuttering through my every word, I managed to ask her why she wanted me to pay for their vacation. And now Eileen also finally seems a bit caught off guard and surprised. She asked me what I meant and then stated that the only reason they even went on this vacation was because I would pay for it. They would never been able to afford this themselves, as they were living paycheck to paycheck. I knew that this part was true. Eileen and my son Kevin did not often talk about their financial situation, but everybody in the family knew they were struggling. Eileen did not have a stable job and was doing odd jobs to earn some money in between caring for the 4 children. Kevin did have a job, but it was not one that paid particularly well. I believed that they would be able to go on a vacation like this with just their own budget, but that did not explain why they were so confident that I would pay for the trip. I wanted to continue the discussion, but before I had the chance, Eileen already called Kevin over and told him that I did not want to pay for their trip after all. And I could see the expression on my son's face from calm to very much distressed. He took a deep breath and told me that if I changed my mind after all, I was free to make that decision, of course. But he also said that he was disappointed because he was assured by me that I would pay for the trip. Now, they did not have enough money to pay rent this month, and they had to work something out quickly. But he was afraid that their landlord would not take kindly to them being late with another payment. Kevin did not use these exact words, but he made it very clear that there was a chance their family would end up on the street if I did not pay them for their trip. I felt like I was pushed into a corner. The money they were asking for was also not something I had just lying around. But the idea of my grandchildren ending up on the street was something I could simply not bear, feeling like I had no other choice but to pay them what they were asking for. And so I decided to play along for now. I told Eileen and Kevin that I had not changed my mind and that I would pay for their vacation. Immediately, a lot of relief came over their face, and they told me how thankful they were for my generosity. It felt good to see them like that, but my feelings were still very much screaming that something was wrong. I said goodbye to everybody and told Kevin he would have the money sent to him next week. I also asked to get all the receipts, which Eileen was quickly able to hand over. I needed some time to think. I needed to get home and try to remember if I actually made any of these promises, or if something very different was going on here. As I sat in my living room, I thought back to the conversations I had with my son and Eileen before their vacation. Had I promised to pay? I strained to remember every detail, every word exchanged. Eileen had mentioned their excitement. Kevin had talked about needing a break. But money? I couldn't recall any mention of it. The more I thought about it, the more uncertain I became. Had I missed something crucial? The more I mulled it over, the more certain I became that I never promised to pay. I had my own financial struggles. I could barely afford a vacation for myself, let alone fund theirs. It seemed outlandish to think I would have agreed to something like that. Yet, their confidence shook me. I needed to find out why they were so sure. But deep down, I was convinced I had made no such promise. I decided to call my other children, hoping they might shed some light on this confusing situation. My daughter Jane answered first, sounding surprised but concerned. I explained the situation, and she listened carefully. Did Kevin or Eileen mention anything about me promising to pay for their vacation? I asked. Jane paused, thinking. No, Mom. They never said anything like that to me. I thanked her and ended the call, feeling more puzzled. Next, I called my sons, Michael and David. Both confirmed they had heard about the supposed promise from Kevin. Kevin said you offered to cover their vacation costs, Michael stated. David echoed the same story. Mom, Kevin was really sure about it, he added. I hung up the phone, my mind spinning. If both my sons had heard it, was it possible I had said something and forgotten? But that seemed unlikely. Feeling confused and uncertain, I sat down to think. How could I uncover the reality behind Kevin's claims? It seemed out of character for me to forget such a significant promise. But why would Kevin lie? The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. I needed a clear head to figure this out. There had to be a way to get to the bottom of this, but I was unsure where to start. I decided to look through the receipts Eileen had given me, hoping to get a clearer picture of their vacation expenses. As I spread them out on the kitchen table, I saw totals from restaurants, theme parks, and luxury hotels. Each one added to my growing sense of disbelief. How had they managed to spend so much? More importantly, why were they so sure I would cover these extravagant costs? Something definitely felt off. The receipts showed they hadn't spared any expenses. There were charges for fine dining, spa treatments, and pricey souvenirs. This raised my suspicion even further. They seemed confident that I would pay for everything. Why would they assume I had the money for such luxury? My doubts grew stronger. There had to be more to this story than what they were telling me. I needed to dig deeper and find out the truth. Kevin knew my financial situation well, since he always helped me with my taxes. He knew I didn't have much extra money. This made their actions even more puzzling. Why would he believe I could afford to pay for such an extravagant vacation? It just didn't add up. Kevin wasn't careless with money. Something was clearly wrong. I needed to understand what was really going on and why they were so insistent. I started questioning why they would spend so extravagantly if they truly believed I would cover the costs. It didn't make sense. If they were counting on me, why not spend more modestly? The lavish expenses made me wonder if they were hiding something. It was time to confront Kevin and get some answers. I had to understand their mindset and why they felt so entitled to my hard-earned money. Realizing something wasn't adding up, I felt determined to get to the bottom of this mystery. I needed to know why they thought I would pay for everything. I couldn't let this go on without understanding their reasoning. There was more to this than met the eye. With renewed resolve, I decided to take action and figure out the truth. It was time to confront Kevin and Eileen about their assumptions. I began suspecting Eileen might be trying to trick me out of money, possibly convincing Kevin to go along with it. She was always the one handling their finances, and I knew she could be persuasive. The idea made me uneasy, but it seemed to fit. Kevin might not question her, especially if she presented it as something I had agreed to. The more I thought about it, the more I felt the need to speak with Kevin alone. My son could be easily influenced, and I never fully trusted Eileen, so I needed to speak with him alone. Kevin was always a bit naive, and Eileen could be very convincing. If there was any truth to my suspicions, I needed to hear it from him without her presence. It was time to get some answers directly from Kevin, away from any potential influence she might have. I called Kevin and asked if we could have lunch tomorrow to discuss the money, and he agreed without hesitation. "Sure, Mom," he said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I'd love to catch up." His easy agreement gave me hope that I could get to the bottom of this. If he was willing to meet so readily, perhaps he wasn't fully aware of what Eileen might be doing. I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. It was already late, and despite trying to sleep, worries kept me awake as I anticipated the next day's meeting. My mind raced with possibilities and concerns. What if Kevin was in on it? What if I had somehow forgotten making such a promise? The uncertainty gnawed at me, making it impossible to rest. I tossed and turned, finally drifting off only to wake up early, still filled with apprehension. Nervous about confronting Kevin, I resolved to find out the truth during our lunch. I needed to be direct, but gentle, ensuring he understood my concerns without feeling attacked. This was about clarity, not conflict. As I prepared to meet him, I reminded myself that the goal was to get to the bottom of this, to understand what had really happened. I hoped Kevin would be honest and open. The next morning, I checked all my emails, text messages, and call history, searching for any evidence of my promise. I scrolled through countless conversations, looking for any mention of covering their vacation costs. Nothing. Not a single message suggested I had agreed to pay. This gave me a small sense of relief, but I still needed to hear it from Kevin. Maybe he'd confirm my memory when we met for lunch. Coming up empty, I hoped Kevin would confirm that I never made such a promise when we met for lunch. As I prepared to leave, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. I needed Kevin to be honest with me, to clear up this confusion. I kept reminding myself that this was about getting to the truth. With everything ready, I headed out, hoping for a straightforward conversation. Kevin arrived looking happy, but his demeanor changed when I told him I had a question about the supposed promise. His smile faded, and he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Mom, what's this about?" he asked, a hint of worry in his voice. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Kevin, I need to talk about the vacation and the money you mentioned." His expression grew more serious, preparing for the conversation. He sighed but had a story ready, claiming I made the promise a year ago during a visit to my house. "Mom, you said it last year when we were all together. You insisted on it," Kevin explained, his voice steady. I frowned, trying to recall. "Kevin, are you sure? I don't remember saying anything like that." He nodded, maintaining eye contact. "Yes, I'm sure, Mom. You kept mentioning it during our visit." Disappointed that separating him from Eileen didn't work, I listened as he confidently recounted his version of events. He described how I had continuously brought up the promise, even when they expressed doubt. The more he talked, the more convinced he seemed of his own story. I felt a pang of frustration. If he truly believed this, how could I make him see my side? I realized this conversation wasn't going to be easy. Kevin claimed I had continuously confirmed the promise during their visit, despite my growing doubts about his story. "Mom, you kept bringing it up, reassuring us that you'd handle the costs," he insisted. My doubts deepened, but I listened without interrupting. "You even said it would be a gift for the kids," Kevin added, trying to solidify his point. I nodded slowly, feeling a knot of confusion and frustration forming. I listened carefully, hoping to find any inconsistencies that might reveal the truth behind his confident assertions. Kevin's voice was steady, but I was alert for any slip-ups. He detailed their visit, mentioning specific moments that seemed familiar yet off. As he spoke, I tried to recall those days accurately, searching for any signs that he might be fabricating parts of his story. Nothing obvious stood out. Realizing he was convinced of his own story, I felt frustrated and unsure how to proceed from there. Kevin's certainty left little room for doubt in his mind. I wanted to believe him, but my own memory conflicted with his account. How could we both be so sure yet remember things so differently? My frustration grew, making it hard to stay composed. I needed a new approach to find the truth. Disheartened by the lack of progress, I thanked Kevin for his time, and we continued our lunch without further discussion. The mood was noticeably tense, but we tried to keep the conversation light. I could see Kevin's discomfort, mirroring my own. As we finished our meal, I felt no closer to understanding what had happened. Despite this setback, I knew I couldn't give up on finding the truth. I resolved to find another way to uncover the truth, feeling more determined than ever to get to the bottom of this. Kevin's confidence in his story only strengthened my resolve. There had to be evidence somewhere, something to clarify what really happened. I wasn't willing to accept this uncertainty. With a renewed sense of purpose, I began considering my next steps, ready to dig deeper into this mystery. After Kevin left, I checked my agenda from around the time of the visit he mentioned, finding the date he referred to. Flipping through the pages, I located the exact week. It was a busy time, filled with family gatherings and appointments. I saw the date circled, reminding me of their visit. The memories were still vague, but I felt a small glimmer of hope. There had to be some way to verify what was said that day. Unsure what was discussed during that visit, I suddenly remembered the security camera in the corner of the room. How had I forgotten about it? The camera was always on, recording everything in the living room. If our conversation took place there, it would be captured. A surge of hope rushed through me. Maybe this was the key to uncovering the truth about the supposed promise. Realizing the conversation might be recorded, I felt a surge of hope and decided to review the footage. I went to the computer and pulled up the security system's interface. Finding the right date, I clicked on the files, my heart pounding with anticipation. If the footage confirmed my memory, I'd finally have the clarity I needed. I quickly realized I needed help navigating the old files, so I decided to call Matthew. I called my other son, Matthew, for help retrieving the old security footage, and he agreed to assist. "Of course, Mom. I'll be over in a bit," he said. Relief washed over me. Matthew was always good with technology. If anyone could find the right footage, it was him. I felt a bit more at ease, knowing I wasn't alone in this. We'd get to the bottom of this together. Later that day, Matthew arrived and quickly found the right recording in the cloud storage, revealing the truth. We sat together, watching the footage. As the video played, I held my breath, hoping it would show something definitive. Matthew's focus was intense, scanning through the video until we reached the moment of their visit. "Here it is, Mom," he said, pressing play. My heart raced as we began to uncover what really happened that day. We watched the footage of the visit, seeing me with Eileen and Kevin, but nothing significant occurred during the conversation. We were all seated in the living room, talking casually. Kevin and Eileen appeared relaxed, and I was my usual self, chatting about family and upcoming events. There was no mention of a promise to pay for their vacation. The conversation was ordinary, without any hint of the dramatic claims Kevin had made. The video showed no tears, no emotion, and no signs of a promise to pay for their vacation. It was just a normal family visit, filled with laughter and lighthearted chatter. I watched closely, but there were no significant moments, no agreements or promises. Kevin's confident story began to crumble in my mind. The footage confirmed what I had suspected all along. There had been no discussion about funding their trip. Matthew and I felt a sense of relief and validation, knowing I hadn't made any promises to cover their expenses. "Mom, you were right," Matthew said, smiling at me. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. The evidence was clear, and my doubts were put to rest. This was the proof I needed to confront Kevin and Eileen. I wasn't imagining things. I knew now that they had lied. Armed with this evidence, I now knew my son and Eileen were lying about the supposed promise. It hurt to realize they had tried to deceive me, but I was resolute. This betrayal needed to be addressed. I couldn't let them think they could manipulate me. With the video as my proof, I felt more determined than ever to confront them about their dishonesty and get to the bottom of their motives. Feeling hurt but resolute, I began planning my next steps to address their deception and protect myself. I needed a strategy that wouldn't hurt the children, but would make Kevin and Eileen understand the gravity of their actions. I knew this confrontation wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. My goal was to handle this with care and firmness, ensuring that they realized the seriousness of their lies. Knowing they had lied, I realized I needed to teach Kevin and Eileen a lesson, but I didn't want the children to suffer. The kids were innocent in all this, and their well-being was my top priority. I needed to approach this carefully, ensuring my actions were firm yet fair. My goal was to make Kevin and Eileen understand the consequences of their deceit without causing undue hardship for their family. I considered my options, eventually coming up with a plan to confront them without causing undue hardship. It needed to be something impactful, a wake-up call that wouldn't hurt the children. I weighed different approaches, thinking through the potential outcomes. Finally, I devised a strategy that I believed would make them see the error of their ways while protecting the kids from any negative fallout. Determined to expose their deceit, I knew I had to be clever and precise in executing my plan. This wasn't just about confronting them. It was about making them understand the gravity of their actions. I needed to present the evidence clearly and show them the impact of their lies. With the recordings as my leverage, I was ready to proceed with caution and determination. I decided not to pay them the money now that I had the recordings, but I needed a more impactful approach. Simply refusing to pay wouldn't be enough. I needed them to realize the seriousness of what they'd done. I contemplated different ways to make my point, eventually settling on a course of action that would be both eye-opening and instructive for them. Formulating my idea, I prepared to set things in motion, knowing it would not be easy to trick my family. This plan required careful execution and a clear head. I outlined each step meticulously, ensuring no detail was overlooked. With everything planned out, I felt a sense of resolve. It was time to act, to show Kevin and Eileen the importance of honesty and integrity. The next phase of my plan was about to begin. I went to my notary to set up my plan, ensuring all the legal documents and changes were properly arranged. Sitting across from him, I explained the situation and my intentions. He listened carefully, nodding as I spoke. "We can draft something that suits your needs," he assured me. This gave me confidence. With his help, I knew I could create a document that would clearly outline the terms and conditions I had in mind. The notary helped me draft a contract and modify existing documents, aligning with my strategy. We worked through the details, ensuring every clause was clear and enforceable. The contract outlined the loan terms, repayment schedule, and consequences of default. By the time we were finished, I felt prepared. This document would protect me and serve as a stern reminder to Kevin and Eileen about the importance of honesty and responsibility. Next, I went to the bank to withdraw the money, raising eyebrows with my large transaction. The teller gave me a curious look but processed the request without question. I felt a bit uneasy carrying such a large sum, but it was necessary for my plan. The cash, combined with the contract, would deliver a powerful message. As I left the bank, I took a deep breath, ready for the next step. Despite the surprise, I managed to gather the necessary funds, tapping into my investments for additional cash. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was worth it. This wasn't just about the money. It was about teaching a valuable lesson. With everything in place, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. I was ready to confront Kevin and Eileen, confident that this approach would make a lasting impact. With everything in place, I prepared to confront Kevin and Eileen, armed with the money and a contract. I reviewed the plan one last time, ensuring I hadn't missed anything. This was a crucial moment, and I needed to execute it perfectly. The contract was clear, the money was ready, and my resolve was firm. It was time to face them and see how they would react to this unexpected twist. Needing the money and knowing I wouldn't change my mind, Kevin and Eileen signed the contract. Kevin hesitated for a moment, then took the pen and scribbled his name. Eileen followed suit, her expression a mix of frustration and resignation. I watched them carefully, feeling a strange mix of sadness and satisfaction. They had no choice but to agree to the terms. The signed contract was a step towards accountability. They refused to admit they had lied about the promise. But I didn't care, I knew the truth. "We never meant to deceive you, Mom," Kevin said defensively. Eileen nodded, looking hurt. "It's just a misunderstanding," she added. I held my ground, knowing the footage and my memories were clear. Their refusal to come clean didn't matter now. The contract was signed, and they were bound by its terms. After the signing, I revealed another surprise. I had changed my will to exclude them, benefiting only their children. Their faces turned pale as I explained. "Your share will go into a fund for the kids," I said. "They'll get it when they turn 18. Kevin and Eileen stared at me, stunned and speechless. This was the final step to ensure they understood the consequences of their actions. Their share would go into a fund for their kids, accessible only when they turned 18, ensuring they wouldn't get another penny from me. "This is for their future," I said firmly. Kevin's eyes widened in shock, while Eileen looked like she might cry. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I already have," I replied, standing my ground. This was my way of protecting my grandchildren and making sure Kevin and Eileen couldn't take advantage of me again. Feeling a sense of closure, I knew I had protected myself and secured my grandchildren's future. As Kevin and Eileen left, still processing the shock, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The truth was out, and I had taken steps to ensure it wouldn't happen again. My grandchildren's future was secure, and I had reclaimed my peace of mind.